Do you recognise this song? If you said, yeah, that's Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, well, no, that's not correct. This is Stairway. That first clip I played you that sounded suspiciously like Stairway to Heaven is actually the opening of We Used To by Dolly Parton.
We used to be so much in love. We used to kiss and hold and touch.
Both of these songs start with a very, very similar acoustic guitar intro, both in the key of A minor and descending in that line cliche fashion down to G sharp, G, F sharp, and an F. They're very, very similar. I find it unlikely that Dolly Parton wasn't inspired by Stairway when she released this track. Her track came out in 1975, Stairway came out in 71. And Dolly Parton actually later covered Stairway to Heaven in the early 2000s, so she was obviously a fan of that song.
The lady who's sure all that glitters is gold.
But interestingly, despite the obvious likeness between both of these songs, Dolly Parton was never taken to court by Led Zeppelin or their lawyers over this likeness. And that's actually the case with all of the examples we're going to look at today. But all of the songs we look at today, despite the likeness between the two different songs, none of them actually wound up in court. So let me know in the comments throughout this video whether you think the likenesses were too much and veered into the realms of plagiarism, or are just sort of simple examples of influence or inspiration. Okay, let's move on to a more recent track, Undressed by Sombr. From the first time I heard this song, I recognised it had a likeness to the track Brazil by Declan McKenna. The likeness between these two tracks is even more apparent if we move them both into the same key. These songs are effectively both using the exact same bass line / guitar riff, where we use this dotted rhythm to move down the tonic notes of chords 6, 5, 4 and 1, albeit they use slightly different versions of chord 5. There's a lot in common here. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sombr track was inspired by Brazil, but I don't think the likenesses are close enough that it would warrant a lawsuit. And, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, none of the songs in this video led to lawsuits, or at least as of recording. But let me know in the comments, do you think these songs are too similar, or are they using fairly generic building blocks to make their music? Another fairly recent song, Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran. The main riff of Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran has a likeness to the track Cry For You by September. Both of these tracks open with a similar synth-based riff, with a very similar melody built into that riff. They're following different chord progressions, but they both start on the same chord of B minor, and they are both in the same key as well, which makes the likeness even more easy to hear. But you may have noticed that both of these songs also have a likeness to an older song, Small Town Boy by Bronxky B. As you can hear, Small Town Boy also uses a very similar riff and very similar chord progression. Small Town Boy is in the key of C minor rather than the key of B minor, but if we move them all into the same key, those likenesses are even more apparent. I've mentioned before that Ed Sheeran has often drawn from other songs to make his music, but what I wonder here is whether he was drawing from the original Small Town Boy track or from the Cry For You track, the more recent song. Now, if you enjoy these videos, then one of the best ways you can thank me is to check out my own original music. I released an album earlier this year called Under an Empty Sky. It's available on CD, vinyl, download and streaming. Links are down below. Thanks very much. So let's move on to the next example, which is Easy Lover by Phil Collins and Phil Bailey. The intro of this song is very similar to the intro of another song by Prince, Take Me With You. Both of these songs have a similar chord progression with that synth arpeggio and the dramatic tom drum fills. Now, assuming that the likenesses here aren't a coincidence, the question is who copied who? Because the Prince song came out in 1985, whereas Easy Lover came out in 1984. However, the Prince song was recorded earlier in January 1984. So Prince had already recorded the song but not released it when Easy Lover came out. So the only way that Phil Collins and Phil Bailey could have copied Prince really is if they had access to an unreleased version, which maybe happened. I'm not sure. I couldn't see anything about it online. Maybe it was just a big coincidence. Who knows? But this song isn't actually the only time that Phil Collins has been accused of copying a Prince song. Various people have pointed out the likeness between Phil Collins' 1985 track Susudio and Prince's 1982 track 1999. Both of these songs have a similar chord vamp. The melodies, the vocal melodies start in a similar way. And in fact, Phil Collins has admitted that 1999 was the influence for this song, and that during the recording of Susudio, they actually had to make some adjustments to the arrangement to stop it sounding too much like 1999. Now, although I can hear the likeness between Susudio and 1999, a track that has a far closer likeness, in my opinion, to 1999 is the 1984 track Dancing in the Sheets by Shalimar, which was released on the Footloose soundtrack. Once again, we have a very similar riff being used, and that's even more clear if we move both tracks into the same key. And our last example today is the track Little Bitch by The Specials. Now, listening to that opening riff from Little Bitch by The Specials, you may have noticed a likeness between that song and a song that came out over 20 years later, Bohemian Like You by Dandy Warhols. Both of these songs start with a very similar guitar riff, which is based around this move from the major triad to the sus4 triad. They both have the same rhythm through which they pivot between the major triad and the sus4 chord. And the chord progression at least starts in the exact same way, starting on the 1 chord, moving to the flat 3 chord. They diverge after that, but effectively the opening bars, or 2 bars even, of both of these songs are identical. The only thing that prevents them from being exactly identical is that they're in different keys, but if I move them into the same key, you can hear how similar these 2 songs are. So let me know in the comments, is it right that these songs didn't wind up the artists in court over copyright infringement lawsuits? Are these just examples of innocent influence and inspiration, or are they more serious examples of plagiarism? Also, let me know in the comments if you can think of any other examples that I should cover in future videos, and do check out my playlist of previous videos covering rip-offs like this. It's in the description down below.